Hey guys, what's going on? It's Spot the Aussie here, your favourite NRL fantasy coach, aka the Fantasy Fanatic, coming at you for round number 14, which officially marks the halfway mark for fantasy. I want to know in the comment section down below how you guys are going. What's your current rank now that we're halfway? It's round number 14, which means we've played 13 rounds. It's halfway to 26 rounds, which is the full season, because of course in fantasy we do not include finals games. There will be match days that you can play, just like State of Origin and your test series. They can pick independent people for that round. But the big thing here is we are only focusing on our actual classic matchmaker, which means we don't include the finals. So if you're liking the series thus far, be sure to give this video a like. Be sure to give me a subscription down below to make sure you get these videos on time as you do, because I'm really enjoying it thus far. The biggest thing for me right now is I'm ranked 4,346, and I seem to be between that 3,000 to 5,000 rank at the moment. I can't seem to go up, and I don't seem to be falling back too bad. Last round number 13 was a bit of a doozy. We came 20,000th overall. There was a couple of upsetting matters. Case of Pritchard obviously getting a concussed HIA at the start of the round. James Graham pulling out last minute, which means I picked up Ben Hampton at the as my non-playing reserve, as my emergency backup players. I still had 17 players playing. Connor Watson came in, which was an interesting trade for me 2 weeks ago, because I thought Peats might get injured in Origin, which means Connor Watson might play a couple of games, and it was a cheap cash out for me. And in other news, our man who we traded in, Cameron Munster, got 54, which I think is one of his highest scores this round. And no, it's the third highest score he's gotten in this season, which is great for us because, again, as I said, he's a great pod to have. There's only so many owners next to his name right now. Well, actually, no, there's now over 10% of owners, because over 1,000 picked him up in the last round. And I still think you should pick him up. Break even of 44 should go up in value a little bit more, but the main thing is his match buys. If you look at his buys, his only buy is round 19 now that we've already gone from round number 12. Other news is that Joey Waddell did a good job for me. The big surprise package here, and well, I shouldn't say it was that big of a surprise, Karl Lawton got 39 at centre. He played the hooker role for Nathan Peats, but surprisingly he ended up playing for 80 minutes, which was a bit of a shocker for me. I didn't think he, not that I don't think he had it in him, but I was a bit surprised that the Titans had decided to go that way. Shoni Mataudia, unfortunately, got 24. Joey Leilua finally got above that 20-30 mark from that last couple of rounds, except for round number 11 where we got 39. So it's been a bit of a much-due game. Jarryd Hayne was disappointing with only 8 points. And the big thing here for me, for Jarryd Hayne owners like myself, is that Jarryd Hayne is apparently going to be playing fullback next round. You imagine when he plays fullback, he's going to be scoring a lot better than what he does at centre, despite the fact that when he played Origin, he ended up playing absolutely amazing at the centre position. And that's how it goes sometimes. Some of these big star players or big game players absolutely break the house down when their team relies upon them and they step up to that kind of next level, where we don't necessarily see that at club level with Jarryd Hayne. We haven't really seen that for a couple of years since he was at the Eels before he made his NFL big debut. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was good at 43. He did one really good break down the middle, a bit of a shimmy sidestep, got over the line for the points. Samurai Dry, I think, has finally hit his homestead, and look at that, 54, 41, 55, which is exactly what we want to see out of a back. A big wowee to Jordan Rapana, because Rapana got 93, and that's not even his highest score. His highest score is 117. He seems to be breaking out. What's his average right now? 55.54, which is the averages you expect from a second row and front row. And the question I seem to be getting a lot this week is, should I be bringing him in? Now, I don't believe in wingers, centers, and fullbacks to some degree, more wingers and centers, scoring that well consistently. You can see that Jordan Rapana's scores, he gets 12, 28. But other than that, he's just done an absolutely amazing job. And it's kind of the way he plays as well. A lot of his points seem to be in tackle bust. He does this thing where he goes up to the line and he's not really barging through a tackle to try to break the line, but he goes up there and pushes their hand off. Like a slow walk up to the line and kind of pushes their hand off, and gets 3 points for that every time he does that. And then we'll get the odd, line break as a result of some gap sort of opening. He's got that speed and acceleration, or Joey Leilua busts through the line and then offloads to Rapana, who's just got the speed to go. But I don't think I'll be jumping on that bandwagon. I think I've got other trades to make, and that's my next question, which is great because it wasn't my next question. should you be saving trades for the end? Look, there's two ways to think about it. The way I see it is you should be making the amount of trades you can possibly do in order to get your final team. It's like looking at a game of chess. When you look at a game of chess or you're opening your first 10 moves, you always want to build a certain a defensive line, develop your pieces, put your bishops in the spot, control the center. And it's much like this as well. You want to be able to look at your end. Who is your end? What does your end look like? Like, for example, for me, I want Cameron Smith after round 19, after he has that final bye round, for those last 7 rounds, that he should be able to absolutely kill, and that would be a big plus to me, despite the fact that a lot of people own him. But that's the reality, that a lot of people have him, but you need to have him. So you really got to be looking for players that you specifically want, that you think are going to keep going and exceeding that end game, and try to make those trades as much as you possibly can. The other flip coin to that is, if you have 0 trades by round 16 and an injury happens, and the injury happened to be one of your guns, like say Paul Vaughan got injured, that's $500,000 that has to sit on the bench for the rest of the season. So I like to have at least, let's say, 6 trades up my sleeve at the end for the last 8 rounds, simply because of that happening. And you don't want to, you could be breaking out red dots everywhere. You could be trading down where you're bringing in Jai Field because he's worth $128,000 for Ben Hampton to give you that extra $100,000, and therefore you've now got $236,000 to upgrade whoever it is to get to that final piece. You got to keep in mind that at the same time you just don't want to not have any trades. Like I said, 6 trades is plenty for the last 8 rounds, with the train of thought that you're not looking to make that many trades, like maybe just the Cameron Smith trade, like I said. So I'm pretty happy with the way my team's kind of evolving. There's no one here who I'd really like to change. Like, I think Semi's good to go. I think Roger's good to go, even though he's a bit up and down. Valentine Holmes, that's a solid 3 fullback. There are, like I said, Rapana, who could possibly be better, but that's going to be up and down. That's going to be, is he like that every game? Does he have that presence? It seems to be his type of season where he's gunning it, and that's going to happen for some players. I can't look at it like this. Semi, Roger, Holmes, who would I trade up for Rapana? And then next week, if Rapana scores lower than the guy who I traded him for, am I going to be disappointed? Very much so. Is there a lot of evidence to suggest that Rapana will continually outscore these guys? To a degree, but like I said, with a winger, it's a lot more versatile. So I'm not going to be looking at making that trade myself. The other thing is looking at players who you missed out at the start of the season, and I see this all the time. I missed the boat on a particular player, and therefore I won't grab him. There's a lot of players who've probably hit their plateau, but if they're guns, and if everyone has them, then you could potentially be missing out on all those points. If you know they're consistent and it's very unlikely for them to score low, that's just a disadvantage to yourself. That's like going up against the house or the casino and not understanding that when you go to the roulette table, that the odds are indeed in favor of the other party, not for the consumer or the individual. So for me, I've traded in Jason Taumalolo for Adam Elliott. And the reality is, I missed out on $85K worth of price rises and all the scores that came along with getting Jason Taumalolo at $553,000. But the other flip coin to that is, like I said, if I don't trade him in, then he scores an 80 next week, and the guy who I had, Adam Elliott, gets 40. That's 40 points I've missed out to the rest of the people. That's why fantasy can be often won in the early to mid game. The guys who have peaked out and pushed an extra 600 to 700 points, because a lot of people you'll find will try to make the same end team. I mean, if you could look at the top 17 fantasy scorers, that's who you want. And if you went through your list, you'd be like, who's the typical people there? Gallen, Fafita. Who else do I have on the list? Sammy Burgess is up there. Crichton is up there. If you missed out on him, that was a big shame. McInnes is up there. He's only X amount of points behind Cameron Smith in overall point scoring. So I brought in Jason Taumalolo, again, for the next factor that the bye coverage doesn't play round... Sorry, he does play round 15, 16, doesn't have a bye until round 18. And that's what I kind of need. I need guys in that middle area that are going to be playing for me and doing it well. So there's a lot of things to kind of consider in this video. Although it's a short video, it's very to the point and kind of looking at that end game. And this is a part where I think a lot of fantasy coaches who are in their first season are going to start looking at this thinking, well, next season I've got a better idea how to develop my team. Maybe I got 20,000th overall out of 97,000 that there is now, and I want to improve that team by, you know, doing the steps that I did. Sometimes it's a little bit luck. Sometimes you just don't get on those cash cows that other people did. Like at the start of the season, we had a lot of centers and a lot of fullbacks that people grabbed. There was a lot of variety there. Some people grabbed Taumalolo, some people didn't. Some people grabbed Sully. Some people grabbed the chap who played Jarryd Hayne, who in the middle of the season, who didn't do that well up in price and then dropped a couple of points there. You know, that's the reality of it. I grabbed Braden Burns. That's a good example of someone who didn't meet expectations. My expectations were he was going to get a lot of game time. He'd been playing fullback. He ended up scoring 53 in the last 3 games, fantasy points wise, in the division under. And I thought, look, he's going to be stepping up. He won't be scoring that well. He's not going to be playing fullback. In fact, he'll be playing wing. But he should still be able to do that. And what we found was that under the high bombs, he just kept dropping them over and over. And instead of getting a point diffuse for catching a bomb while almost being tackled, he was losing 2 points. So the point variation for every play that happened was 3 points of missed opportunity. And, you know, there were other gentlemen like, you know, Harawire-Naera, who started, look at that price tag, $267 over the season is $200,000. So he started at $467,000. The highest person in terms of the highest point scorer from last season in the centers, and therefore the highest priced center, was now abysmal this season. He's just gone backwards. He might have had the good odd game or two, but just hasn't had the same effect. Conrad Hurrell 3 years ago, if you look back at one of my older videos where I look specifically at Conrad Hurrell from one season to the next, his tackle bust every game averaged 4. And when you average 4 tackle busts worth 3, you're getting 12 points minimum at the center. And that doesn't include the fact that a tackle bust usually goes into a line break. And when you're tackle busting in a center position, you're probably getting a try in there as well. And he was averaging about 45. So it's tricky to look at a couple of things here. And that's why looking at the spreadsheets that were on the page of the Fantasy Lounge or the Renegades and looking at some of the data there, it's really important when you build your team. And that was one of the reasons why in the first round I ended up getting inside the top 25, because I'd build a team where I was top heavy, where I'd build all these guys who I knew was going to score well, and then low end, the guys who may or may not score well, like the cheapies, the rookies, ended up doing it well. Whereas some people decided to stack second row and play them like Luke Yates. You know, he ended up getting, you know, whatever the point score was in the first couple of rounds, which was nowhere near a consistent Jack DeBellin or a Paul Vaughan, for example. So, you know, there's a lot of examples. Even James Tarmo. A lot of people grabbed him because, well, James Tarmo seems to be going to Penrith. James Tarmo trained the house down. James Tarmo looked absolutely amazing in the nines. And I think a lot of coaches will look at that thinking, well, a leopard doesn't change its spots because it changes teams. What are the other factors there? Does he play more minutes? Is he in a different position? Those are the two usual factors there. Like Paul Vaughan, he ended up averaging about 12 more minutes a game this season, and therefore went up about 10-12 points a game as a result, because he was scoring 1 point per minute. So every minute he was on, it was greatly going up. So as you can see, where he'd be averaging 30 minutes last season or 35, he was averaging some games at 56, 50, 57, and scoring well, because, you know, he's a machine. He's a tackle busting machine. So I hope a lot of people out there, even though they might be lower ranked this round, aren't getting disheartened. There's still a lot of things that can factor, but the main thing here is fantasy rewards coaches who do exceedingly well at the start of the season, because if you have bought the right players and they've gone up in value, you can then trade out those players to get other players, or if they've hit that peak. And that's what it was all about. Like, a lot of people didn't start with Felice Kafusi, like I did, for example. He ended up making $200,000. You trade him out because he was no longer playing in the second row. That's a huge pickup. One of the guys who I didn't pick up, who a lot of you did, was Jarryd Wallace. Jarryd Wallace was a bit more upsy-turvy because Jarryd Wallace ended up scoring well on the basis of the injuries in the Titans. It was unheard of, the amount of injuries, and therefore look at the minutes he played as a prop. 69, 63, 63, 63, 67, 73, 63, 71. That's unheard of. And you have to understand and watch the games and be like, well, why is he playing more minutes? Is that going to be a common consistency? And it turns out that why it wasn't, a lot of it was to luck. You know, the fact that just the injuries just compounded, and one injury and the next, and it was absolutely insane. So, you know, I'm really enjoying this season. I think a lot of people have taken a lot out of these videos. I love the feedback you guys have been giving me, the honesty, the people like, oh, where's the video this week? I can't wait. There's been fans from all different ages. There's even females watching this, which is great. I love the fact that there are people. There was one lady who was on my Twitter who was saying, when's the next video out? Because I think I was late by a couple of hours. And, you know, it's great to see that fantasy involves all fans of all different backgrounds, ethnicities, sexes, even people international, not just your Kiwis and Australians, but we had some people from England playing because, you know, they don't have a Super League fantasy system like we do. So, guys, I'm going to wrap this video up. Remember, have a look at your buy planning. Take into mind how many trades you have as well. Evaluate it. Is it worth making the trade? If it's going to be for one game, it's not worth it. A prime example is my boy Karl Lawton. Karl Lawton will play hooker again in round 15 because Nathan Peats has origin duties. I would think Nathan Peats would have origin duties because Peter Wallace, he was injured the first game and he was supposedly going to get picked, but I think Nathan Peats played himself into game 2 as a result of how he played in game 1. I would not pick up Karl Lawton for the simple fact that he's going to be playing around 15. He's not going to be doing that consistently. So what you'd be looking at doing here is, if you're looking to upgrade and you don't have enough cash, you'd be trading out to the cheapest guys and guys who aren't necessarily going to be playing. So you can do the captain's loophole after round 19. If you have 18 to 17 players playing, you can do the captain's loophole as many times as you want. But the risk factor there is if someone pulls out last minute, you're not going to have that 17th man score points, and then you're going to be down to 16. So a lot of things to consider, guys. Keep your questions coming in. I've really enjoyed, you know, helping you, helping me, helping you kind of thing that we've got going here. And I'll talk to you guys shortly. Shh.